I noticed the changes gradually, like watching shadows lengthen across our living room floor. Ali and I sat on opposite ends of our grey sectional, the same couch where we used to cuddle during our movie nights. Now, the space between us felt like a chasm. The TV played some Netflix show about time travelers. Her choice, but her eyes remained glued to her phone screen, the blue light reflecting off her face. Her thumbs danced across the keyboard, and every few seconds, a small smile would appear, then vanish. "I want some popcorn," I offered, trying to bridge the gap. She barely looked up. "No thanks, I'm good." I shifted on the couch, the leather creaking beneath me. The weekend before, she'd begged off our usual Saturday morning hike, claiming she needed to catch up on work. The weekend before that, she'd skipped our standing brunch date with my sister. Small things, maybe, but they piled up like stones in my stomach. Her phone buzzed again. Another smile. The actors on screen moved through their scenes, but I couldn't focus. Instead, I found myself counting. 14 times she'd checked her phone in the last 30 minutes. Not that I was keeping track, except I was. "Everything okay at work?" I ventured, knowing her marketing team had been busy with a new campaign. "Oh yeah, just some group chat stuff." The old Ali would have launched into a story about office drama, or shared whatever meme had made her laugh. This Ali just sank deeper into the couch cushions, angling herself slightly away from me. When we'd first moved into this house 2 years ago, Sunday nights were sacred. We'd cook together, watch something, talk about our week ahead. Now the silence felt heavy, interrupted only by the tap-tap of her fingers on her phone screen. I reached for my own phone, scrolling mindlessly through emails I'd already read. The time travelers on screen were having some intense conversation about changing the past. I wondered if I could pinpoint the exact moment things had started to shift between us. Was it last month when she'd started going to those after-work networking events? Or maybe during that business trip to Chicago, when her usual constant stream of texts had slowed to a trickle? "Do you want to grab dinner with Mark and Sarah next weekend?" I asked, remembering the text from my best friend earlier that day. "Next weekend." She finally looked up, but her expression was distant. "Oh, I've got that marketing mixer thing on Saturday. Rain check?" Another stone in my stomach. She'd been saying that a lot lately, rain check. Like our life together had become something to be postponed. The show ended, and I realized I couldn't recall a single plot point. Ali stretched and stood up, her phone still in hand. "I think I'm going to head up early," she said. "Got a big presentation tomorrow." I watched her climb the stairs, noticed how she checked her phone one last time before disappearing around the corner. The house felt emptier somehow, though nothing had really changed. The same photos still hung on our walls, us in Cancun, at her sister's wedding, outside this very house the day we moved in. But looking at them now, they felt like artifacts from someone else's life. I turned off the TV, and the silence rushed in to fill the space. In the kitchen, I found her coffee mug from this morning, lipstick stained on the rim, sitting next to mine in the sink. Such a small detail, but it twisted something in my chest. We used to clean up together, trading silly stories about our days while we did the dishes. The changes were subtle, like water wearing away at stone. But standing there in our dark kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was shifting, and I had no idea how to stop it. The drive to my grandfather's farmhouse was unusually quiet. Ali kept her head turned toward the window, scrolling through her phone while I navigated the familiar country roads. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fields, and memories of previous family gatherings flooded back. My mom greeted us at the door with her trademark bear hug. The farmhouse hadn't changed. Same creaky floorboards, same faded wallpaper, same comforting smell of fresh-baked cookies. Cousins, aunts, and uncles filled every corner, their voices creating that familiar family din. Grandpa sat in his favorite leather armchair by the fireplace, his weathered face lighting up as we approached. I knelt beside him, and he squeezed my hand with surprising strength for an 89-year-old. "There's my boy," he said. "And Ali." Ali managed a polite smile and a brief hello before drifting toward the kitchen. Throughout dinner, she barely touched her food, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate, while my family shared stories about Grandpa's adventures as a young man. Uncle Mike launched into the tale of how Grandpa once wrestled a neighbor's escaped bull back into its pen. Damn thing was twice his size, but Pop wouldn't back down. The table erupted in laughter, except for Ali. She kept checking her phone under the table, something she never used to do during family gatherings. When Mom brought out the birthday cake, chocolate with buttercream frosting, Grandpa's favorite, Ali excused herself to take a call. Later, during the toast, we all raised our glasses while Grandpa spoke about family being life's greatest blessing. I noticed Ali's chair was empty. Found her on the porch, wrapped in her cardigan, typing furiously on her phone. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff," she muttered, not looking up. We shared the guest room upstairs, the one with the quilted bedspread Mom made years ago. Around midnight, Ali's phone buzzed. She grabbed it immediately, angling the screen away from me. At sunrise, I woke to find her fully dressed, packing her overnight bag. "There's an emergency at work," she said, zipping up her bag. "The Wilson account is falling apart. I need to head back." "But we were supposed to help Mom make breakfast. You know how she looks forward to this." "I'm sorry, I really can't stay. Can you make my excuses to everyone?" Before I could protest, she was already heading downstairs. The sound of her car starting up cut through the morning quiet, leaving me alone with the distant crow of roosters and a hollow feeling in my chest. Mom's disappointed face when I came down solo stayed with me all morning. Grandpa asked about Ali during breakfast, and I repeated her excuse about work, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. The farmhouse suddenly felt different, the warm memories of previous gatherings overshadowed by Ali's empty chair at the table. I sat at my grandfather's ancient oak desk, laptop open for our scheduled video call. The farmhouse's familiar creaks and the distant mooing of cattle provided a strange comfort as I waited for Ali to connect. When her face appeared on screen, something felt off, that same distant look I'd been seeing lately, only now amplified through the digital interface. "Hey, I've been thinking," she started, adjusting her position on what looked like our couch back home. Her casual tone felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this conversation. About our marriage. I leaned forward, my stomach already tightening. "What about it?" "Well, I've been reading about different relationship dynamics. Have you ever considered that traditional marriage might be limiting?" The words hit me like ice water. My hands grew cold against the keyboard as I processed what she was suggesting. "Limiting how?" "You know, there are couples who've found ways to keep things exciting. Open their marriage up to new experiences." She spoke as if discussing weekend plans, not the complete upheaval of our relationship. Blood rushed to my ears. The familiar room suddenly felt alien, Grandfather's antique collection watching me like silent judges. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "It could spice things up, Jack. Add some excitement. We're still young, why should we restrict ourselves?" My throat constricted. The wedding photo on the desk, us beaming at each other under an arch of flowers, seemed to mock me now. "You want to sleep with other people?" "It's not just about sex. It's about freedom, exploration. We'd still be committed to each other, just differently." I gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. The oak felt solid, real, unlike everything else in this moment. "How long have you been thinking about this?" "A while," she admitted, her eyes darting away from the camera. "I've been talking to some friends who..." Friends. The word came out sharper than intended. Those mysterious phone calls, the constant texting, her sudden work emergency, pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. "Jack, don't make this something it's not. I'm just suggesting we discuss possibilities. Keep an open mind." Open mind. The phrase echoed in my head like a bad joke. Through the screen, our living room, our shared space, looked different now. Tainted. The woman gazing back at me through the pixels seemed like a stranger wearing my wife's face. "I need to go," I managed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. The familiar creak of my grandfather's chair grounded me as I shifted back. "Jack, wait." I ended the call. The sudden silence in the room felt deafening. Outside, life continued normally, birds chirping, cattle lowing, the ancient maple trees swaying in the breeze. But inside, my world had tilted on its axis, leaving me grasping for balance against my grandfather's solid oak desk. I couldn't sleep after that call. The old wooden porch creaked under my weight as I sank into Grandpa's rocking chair, the same one where he'd tell me stories during summer nights when I was a kid. The stars stretched across the sky, cold and distant, just like Ali had become. 6 years. 6 years of memories played through my mind like some twisted highlight reel. Our first date at that cramped Italian restaurant where we both ordered spaghetti and laughed about the sauce stains on our shirts. The weekend trips to the coast. The way she'd scrunch her nose when I made terrible puns. The moment I proposed, down on one knee in Central Park, thinking I'd found my forever. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. No messages from her, just silence. A shooting star streaked across the sky. I remembered how we used to make wishes together. Now I wondered if all her wishes had been about escaping what we had. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. The cool night air couldn't calm the heat rising in my chest. How long had she been planning this? While I was coding late nights at work, dreaming of our future, was she already imagining herself with other men? The image made me sick. My wedding ring caught the moonlight. I twisted it around my finger, remembering our vows. "Only you," she'd said. What a joke that seemed now. I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my complete devotion. And somehow it wasn't enough. The porch steps still had that little heart we'd carved during our first visit here. HJH forever. I traced the weathered grooves with my finger, feeling the roughness of the wood. Fresh tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Moths circled the porch light, repeatedly slamming themselves against the glass. I felt just as stupid, repeatedly running through memories, searching for signs I must have missed. The late-night texts, the sudden work emergencies, her growing distance at family gatherings. The pieces were all there. I'd just been too trusting to put them together. Grandpa's dog, Old Blue, padded out onto the porch and rested his head on my knee. At least someone still wanted to be close to me. I scratched behind his ears, grateful for the simple comfort of his presence. The farm stretched out before me, dark shapes of barns and silos against the star-filled sky. This place had always represented stability to me, generations of my family building something lasting. I'd wanted that same stability with Ali. Now everything felt as fragile as a house of cards. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone, opening our photo album. 6 years of smiles, kisses, and shared moments. When did her smiles start looking forced? When did the light in her eyes start dimming? Or had I just been too blind to see it? The night grew colder, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Sleep felt impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face on that video call, excited about the prospect of destroying everything we'd built together. Like our marriage was some kind of experiment she'd grown bored with. The anger came in waves, crashing against the shore of my grief. I wanted to scream, to break something, to demand answers. But underneath it all was a hollowness that threatened to swallow me whole. The woman I loved had become a stranger, and I never saw it coming. I couldn't stand it anymore at my grandfather's farm. The weight of everything crushed my chest, making each breath harder than the last. At 4 a.m., I threw my clothes into my bag and left a note explaining a work emergency. The irony wasn't lost on me. The drive back felt like a fever dream. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tight, knuckles white against the black leather. The highway stretched empty before me, streetlights casting intermittent shadows across the dashboard. My mind kept replaying Ali's words about opening up our marriage, each time hitting like a fresh punch to the gut. I pulled into our driveway around 7 a.m. Ali's car was there, which surprised me. She usually left for work by now. Walking through the front door, I found her sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone while sipping coffee. She didn't even flinch when I walked in, like she'd been waiting for me. "You're back early," she said, not looking up from her screen. I dropped my bag by the door. "We need to talk about what you said yesterday." "I figured that's why you came back." She put her phone down, finally meeting my eyes. Her calmness made my blood boil. "How long have you been planning this?" "It's not about planning, Jack. Sarah and Mike tried it and they're happier than ever. It's about growing together, exploring." "Don't." My voice came out sharper than intended. "Don't tell me this is about us growing together. This is about you wanting to sleep with other people." She sighed, like I was a child who didn't understand basic math. It's not that simple. Monogamy is just one way to approach relationships. Look at Rachel and Tom. "I don't care about Rachel and Tom or Sarah and Mike." I slammed my hand on the counter. "I care about us. About our vows." The next few days were a blur of cold shoulders and silence. Ali stayed out later at work, always with a ready excuse. Her phone became a constant companion, angled away from me whenever I walked past. She'd take calls in other rooms, her voice dropping to whispers. One morning, while she showered, I did something I never thought I'd do. Her phone sat on the nightstand, face down. The sound of running water filled our bedroom as I picked it up, hands shaking. Locked. I tried her birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary. Nothing. Then I remembered the name of her childhood dog she'd mentioned once. The screen unlocked. My heart pounded as I opened her messages, emails, social media. Nothing concrete jumped out, but there were conversations with names I didn't recognize, plans for drinks I hadn't heard about. Most telling were the long threads with her friend Sarah, full of talk about exploring options and breaking free from traditional constraints. The shower stopped. I quickly put the phone back, exactly as I'd found it. When Ali walked out wrapped in a towel, I pretended to be absorbed in my laptop. But inside, something had broken. The trust we'd built over 6 years had crumbled, and I wasn't sure we could ever rebuild it. Through the tiny airplane window, Frankfurt's skyline emerged from beneath the clouds. The sight should have excited me, my first major international business trip, but all I could think about was Ali and what she might be doing back home. 3 weeks felt like an eternity when trust had become as fragile as glass. I checked my phone after landing. No messages from Ali. The last text from her was a generic "have a safe flight" from 12 hours ago. Not even an emoji. I remembered how different it used to be, how she'd spam me with heart emojis and silly selfies whenever we were apart. The first few days in Germany were a blur of meetings and technical discussions. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. But every night in my hotel room, the silence amplified my thoughts. I'd stare at my phone, watching Ali's social media activity, while she remained quiet in our chat. When she finally called on day 4, her voice felt distant, like she was reading from a script. "How's the weather there?" "Cold. Rainy. How are things at home?" "Oh, you know. Same old. Work's been crazy." The conversation died after 5 minutes of empty small talk. No "I miss you" or "I love you." Just polite exchanges that could have been between strangers. Her texts followed the same pattern. Quick responses hours apart. "Hope the meetings went well. Just heading to bed. Busy day ahead." Each notification made my stomach twist. I found myself analyzing every word, every delay between messages. Was she out when she didn't respond for hours? Who was she with? The questions ate at me during client dinners and presentation preparations. One night, after a particularly long day of meetings, I noticed she'd posted a photo at a new restaurant downtown. She hadn't mentioned going out. The comment section was filled with replies from her friends, names I recognized from the messages I'd seen on her phone. My finger hovered over the like button before I closed the app entirely. During video calls, she always seemed to be in motion, folding laundry, preparing dinner, multitasking in ways that prevented any real conversation. Her eyes rarely met the camera. The comfortable silences we used to share had transformed into awkward pauses that we rushed to fill with weather updates and work anecdotes. 2 weeks in, her messages became even more sporadic. "Sorry, been swamped at work" became her go-to response. I remembered the conversations I'd found on her phone about exploring options, and each delayed response felt like confirmation of my worst fears. My German colleagues invited me for drinks after work, but I kept declining. The thought of Ali using my absence as an opportunity to explore consumed me. I'd sit in my hotel room, refreshing social media feeds and message threads, looking for clues in every digital breadcrumb she left behind. The distance that was supposed to give me clarity only magnified the cracks in our relationship. Each passing day in Frankfurt felt like watching our marriage dissolve in slow motion, powerless to stop it from an ocean away. I couldn't focus on the conference presentation. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, each vibration sending a jolt through my body. After 3 days in Frankfurt, the distance from Ali felt like a chasm. The hotel room's stillness only amplified my racing thoughts. I paced back and forth, rehearsing what to say. My hands trembled as I opened my laptop and clicked the video call button. Each ring echoed like a countdown. Ali's face appeared on screen. She sat in our kitchen, that familiar yellow wall behind her. Her hair was different. When did she get those highlights? "We need to talk about what's happening between us." "Jack, you're supposed to be networking. Isn't it late there?" "Stop deflecting. You've been pushing this open marriage thing, and I can't take it anymore. What's really going on?" She sighed, running her fingers through her hair. "I've been trying to tell you. Our marriage feels stagnant. Other couples are exploring different dynamics." "Other couples aren't us. Did you already find someone? Is that what this is about?" "God, Jack, why do you always jump to the worst conclusion? I'm trying to have an adult conversation about our future." "Adult conversation? You dropped this bomb right before I left for Frankfurt. That's not a conversation, that's an ambush. Her face hardened. Maybe if you weren't so rigid, so stuck in your ways. Rigid? Because I don't want my wife sleeping with other people. It's not just about sex. It's about freedom, about growing as individuals. I slammed my hand on the desk. We can grow together. That's what marriage is supposed to be. When I get back, I said, my voice shaking, we're having a real conversation about this. And if you can't commit to our marriage as it is, we need to make some serious decisions. She stared at me through the screen, her expression unreadable. Fine. Have a safe flight back. The call ended. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the black screen. Within minutes, I had my laptop open again, booking the next available flight home. The conference could manage without me. 18 hours later, my taxi pulled up to our house. The garden looked different, neater than when I left. The windows gleamed. Something felt off. I unlocked the front door. The house smelled of cleaning products. Everything was spotless, organized, not Ali's usual style. Our shoes lined up perfectly by the door. The mail sorted into neat piles. Ali! She emerged from the kitchen wearing that blue dress I gave her last Christmas. Her smile looked rehearsed, like she was greeting a client at work. Jack, you're early. The distance between us felt infinite, though we stood just feet apart. I watched her fidget with her wedding ring, a nervous tell I'd noticed years ago. I thought we should have that conversation sooner rather than later. Her smile faltered. I wasn't expecting you until next week. I looked around our too-clean house, at my wife's too-perfect appearance. Everything screamed of preparation, of hiding something. The dread that had been building in Frankfurt solidified into a cold mass in my stomach. Clearly, I managed to say. I sat across from Ali at our kitchen table, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows, feeling oddly harsh and unforgiving. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. The pristine state of our house from yesterday only amplified the artificial nature of our interaction. Every movement, every breath felt calculated. How long? The words scraped against my throat. Ali stared into her cup, her fingers tracing its rim. The silence stretched between us like a physical barrier. Just tell me the truth. I deserve that much. She lifted her eyes to meet mine, and I saw tears forming. It was only once. The words hit me like a physical blow. My stomach lurched and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. The room started spinning, and suddenly our kitchen, the place where we'd shared countless meals and morning coffees, felt alien and hostile. When? Last month. When you were in Frankfurt. Her voice cracked. Jack, I'm so. I held up my hand, cutting off her apology. The pieces fell into place, her distant behavior, the late-night calls, the sudden interest in opening our marriage. It wasn't about exploration or growth. It was about justification. Who? Someone from work. It didn't mean anything. I let out a bitter laugh. 6 years of marriage reduced to it didn't mean anything. The wedding photos on our wall now felt like they were mocking me. Every happy memory we created in this house was tainted. Without a word, I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound jarring in the heavy silence. Ali reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear a touch. I grabbed my keys and wallet, leaving my cold coffee and shattered trust behind. The morning air hit my face as I stepped outside, and I gulped it down like a drowning man. My feet carried me to the little cafe 3 blocks away, the one where I used to buy Ali's favorite pastries on Sunday mornings. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and searched for divorce lawyers in our area. The first one had good reviews and offered free consultations. I hit call before I could second-guess myself. Henderson Associates, how may I help you? I need to speak with someone about initiating divorce proceedings. The words fell from my lips with surprising ease, as if they'd been waiting there all along. As I scheduled a consultation for later that afternoon, I felt an occult sense of clarity cutting through the pain. Our marriage wasn't just broken, it was irreparable. The trust we'd built over 6 years had crumbled in a single conversation. I drove back to our house, no, her house now, during her work hours. The key felt cold and unfamiliar in my hand. Inside, everything looked exactly as I'd left it 2 days ago, yet somehow different. Foreign. Like a movie set of what used to be my life. I grabbed the suitcases from the garage and methodically went through the rooms. Clothes. Documents. My laptop. Personal items. The process was mechanical, helping me stay focused. I avoided looking at our wedding photos still hanging on the walls, at the blanket we bought together in that little shop in Vermont, at her coffee mug still sitting in the dish rack. My hands shook when I reached my drawer of watches. The one she gave me for our 3rd anniversary stayed put. Couldn't bring myself to touch it. In the bathroom, I swept my toiletries into a bag, careful not to disturb her perfectly arranged bottles and creams. The scent of her shampoo hit me, and I had to grip the counter for a moment, breathing through the wave of nausea. The new apartment was bare and smelled of fresh paint. White walls, generic furniture, no personality. Perfect. I dropped the suitcases in the bedroom and sat on the unmade bed, surrounded by boxes of my life. My phone buzzed. Ali, again. 5th time today. I let it go to voicemail like all the others. Later, a text, please talk to me. We can work through this. I made a mistake. Blocked her. The divorce papers arrived a week later. Reading through them with my lawyer felt surreal. Assets. Property division. Terms and conditions for the end of a marriage. He talked about mediation, settlements, timelines. I nodded along, signing where indicated. Ali's emails kept coming. Long, emotional messages about regret, about saving our marriage, about therapy. Each one felt like reopening a wound. I created a separate folder for them, unread. The fury came in waves. During a client meeting, memories of her lying next to me in bed, texting him, made my hands shake so badly I had to excuse myself. At the grocery store, spotting her favorite cereal brand sent me into such a rage I abandoned my cart and left. Some nights, the relief crept in. Relief from the suspicion, the doubt, the constant checking of phones. Relief from pretending everything was fine when my gut screamed otherwise. Those moments felt like betrayal, too. How dare I feel better about losing her? My lawyer called about a mediation date. Ali wanted to meet to talk things through face to face. I declined. There was nothing left to say. The papers would do the talking. After the divorce papers were finalized, I booked a one-way ticket to New Zealand. The decision came after staring at my laptop screen for hours, scrolling through destinations. My finger hovered over the purchase button for a solid minute before I finally clicked. The journey would drain a chunk of my savings, but I needed this. I landed in Auckland with just a backpack and a loose itinerary. The first few days I wandered the city streets, my mind still clouded with memories of home. But as I ventured into the countryside, something shifted. The Tonguro crossing trail stretched before me, challenging and beautiful. My legs burned with each step, and the physical exhaustion somehow made the emotional weight easier to bear. In Queenstown, I signed up for a paragliding course on impulse. The instructor noticed my white-knuckled grip on the harness and said something that stuck with me. The fear never goes away, you just learn to fly with it. Up there, suspended between sky and earth, I felt the smallest I'd ever been. It was oddly comforting. 3 weeks turned into 2 months. I worked remotely from hostels, met travelers with their own stories of loss and renewal. A German backpacker taught me to play guitar in the common room of a hostel in Wellington. My fingers were clumsy at first, but the simple act of learning something new felt like progress. When I finally returned home, my apartment didn't feel like the empty shell it had been. I hung photos from my trip on the walls, not of myself, but of landscapes that reminded me of moments when I felt strong. The guitar I bought in Wellington found its place in the corner of my living room. I reached out to Mike and Dave, friends I'd neglected during my marriage. We met at our old basketball court, where I hadn't played in years. The familiar rhythm of the game came back slowly, along with the easy banter we used to share. They didn't push me to talk about Ali, and I was grateful for that. The guitar lessons I'd started in New Zealand led me to a local music group. Every Thursday night, I joined other beginners in a small studio downtown. Sarah, the instructor, had infinite patience with my fumbling attempts at chord progressions. The focus required to learn new songs left no room for dwelling on the past. One evening, after group practice, I found myself actually laughing at a terrible music pun someone made. The sound surprised me. It wasn't forced or hollow. It was genuine. I realized I'd gone a whole day without thinking about the divorce. My sister Julia invited me to her art gallery opening. I almost declined, knowing some mutual friends who knew Ali might be there. But I went anyway, wearing the confidence I'd found somewhere between New Zealand's peaks and my newfound hobbies. A few people asked how I was doing, and for the first time, I could answer honestly that I was okay. The ring mark on my finger had faded, along with the instinct to check my phone for messages that wouldn't come. I still had moments when a song or a random memory would hit hard, but they didn't paralyze me anymore. They were just waves and I had learned to surf them. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed the story, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video for more stories like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have any similar stories to share, leave them in the comments and we'll make sure to bring them to life. Thanks for watching.